Hi everyone and welcome to this week's English tutorial. In today's tutorial, we're going to be looking at three phrases which people often mix up. They're quite similar, but we use them in different ways and in different contexts. So the three phrases are finally, in the end, and at the end. And beware, because there are some false friends here that you need to be aware of. So let's start with finally. So in English, we use finally in a couple of ways. We can use finally if we're waiting a very long time for something and then it happens. So let's imagine you're at a restaurant and you've ordered your main course, but it takes a really long time for the food to arrive. And then you're telling the story. You can say, we were waiting so long. I think we waited for 45 minutes. And then the food finally arrived. So that's something you can say. You use finally in that context. Let's look at another example. Well, let's imagine that you've got some exams or you're writing an essay. You could say, oh, I finally finished my essay, or I've finally completed all of my exams. Here, we're waiting a long time for something to finish in this case. So we can use the word finally. And notice as well where I put the word finally. I said, I have finally completed my exam. So it goes just before the main verb. I have finally completed, or the food finally arrived. It sounds better there than in any other position in the sentence. Okay, let's look at the second meaning of finally. So we can also use finally if we're talking about a long list of things. Finally is before we mention the last thing in the list. So, for example, I went to the town and I went to the supermarket, the post office, the bank, and finally I went to the pharmacy. This is the last thing in a long list. So that's how we use finally. Now let's look at in the end. And this is where problems often arise with students of English, because in other languages it's a little bit different. So let's look at how we use in the end. In the end is used when we are talking about the conclusion to a situation when maybe it's a little bit different to what we expected. So for example, we were supposed to go to the park, or we were planning to go to the park, but it rained. So in the end, we went to the pub. Now, from my students, a lot of mistakes that I hear is using the word finally. So they might say, we were planning to go to the park, but it rained. So finally, we went to the pub. But this is incorrect. We don't use finally in this context. We use in the end. And the last phrase, at the end. So we use at the end when we're talking about a story. It could be a movie, a book, something like that. We talk about what happened at the end of the movie. So we can say at the beginning of the movie and at the end of the movie. So for example, what happened at the end of the movie Titanic? Well, we know that at the end of Titanic, the ship sank, sadly, and I won't say what happened just in case you haven't seen the movie. No spoilers, okay? So that's how we use at the end. Okay, so a quick recap. Finally is used for when we're waiting a long time for something, we can use finally. It finally arrived. For a long list of places we've been or things we've done, Finally, I went to the post office. We use in the end when we're talking about the conclusion of a situation, which is maybe a little bit different to what was originally planned. And we use at the end when we are talking about a story, like a book or a movie. And that's it. Okay, so hopefully those points are clear, and I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. If you did, then please click the like button. And if you have any questions, then you can post them in the comments section below. And please do subscribe to this channel. I'll be posting new video tutorials every week, and it's a great way to support free language learning content on the internet. So I'll see you next week for another tutorial.